Hello students, today our topic of discussion is a very famous novel called Robinson Crusoe. It is a novel by Daniel Defoe and it was first published on 25th April 1719. This first edition credited the work's fictional protagonist Robinson Crusoe as its author. It was published under the considerably longer original title consisting 65 words. I am reading out The Life and Strange Surprising Adventures of Robinson Crusoe of York, Mariner, who lived 28 years, all alone in an uninhabited island on the coast of America, near the mouth of the great river of Orinoco, having been cast on shore by shipwreck, wherein all the men perished but himself, with an account how he was at last as strangely delivered by pirates. Defoe developed a taste for travel that lasted throughout his life. His fiction reflects this interest. Robinson Crusoe changes his life by voyaging far from his native England. Tim Severin, in his 2003 book In Search of Robinson Crusoe, says that the account of Henry Pittman chronicling his escape from a Caribbean penal colony and subsequent shipwrecking and desert island misadventures is the inspiration for the story. Epistolary, confessional, and didactic in form, the book is a fictional autobiography of the title character, whose birth name is Robinson Crusoe, a castaway who spends years on a remote tropical island near Trinidad, encountering cannibals, captives, and mutineers before being rescued. Crusoe's success in mastering his situation, overcoming his obstacles, and controlling his environment shows the condition of mastery in a positive light. Crusoe lands in an inhospitable environment and makes it his home. Moreover, Crusoe's mastery over nature makes him a master of his fate and of himself. Early in the novel, he frequently blames himself for disobeying his father's advice or blames the destiny that drove him to sea. But later, Crusoe stops viewing himself as a passive victim and strikes a new note of self-determination. In building a home for himself on the island, he finds that he is the master of his life. He suffers a hard fate and still finds prosperity. The time frame of this novel is from 1659 to 1694. The setting is first York, a town in England, then London, then Saleh in North Africa, then Brazil, then a deserted island of Trinidad, then England, then Lisbon, then overland from Spain toward England, then England, and finally the island again. The details of Crusoe's island were probably based on the Caribbean island of Tobago, since that island lies a short distance north of the Venezuelan coast near the mouth of the Orinoco River close to Trinidad. Daniel Defoe was born in 1660 in London and was originally christened Daniel Foe. He changed his name around the age of 35 to sound more aristocratic. Like his character Robinson Crusoe, Defoe also was a third child. His mother and father, James and Mary Foe, were Presbyterian dissenters. James Foe was a middle-class wax and candle merchant. As a boy, Daniel witnessed two of the greatest disasters of the 17th century, a recurrence of the plague and the Great Fire of London in 1666. These events shaped his fascination for catastrophes and survival in his writing. Defoe attended a respectable school in Dorking, where he was an excellent student. But as a Presbyterian, he was forbidden to attend Oxford or Cambridge. He entered a dissenting institution called Morton's Academy and considered becoming a Presbyterian minister. Though he abandoned the plan, his Protestant values endured throughout his life despite discrimination and persecution. And these values are expressed in Robinson Crusoe. One of his first creations was a poem written in 1701, entitled The True-Born Englishman, which became popular and earned Defoe some fame. He also wrote political pamphlets. He was incredibly wide-ranging and productive as a writer. He turned out over 500 books and pamphlets. Defoe began writing fiction late in life, around the age of 60. He published his first novel, Robinson Crusoe, in 1719 and attracted a large readership. He next wrote Moll Flanders, the story of a tough, streetwise heroine whose fortunes rise and fall dramatically. Both works straddle the border between journalism and fiction. Robinson Crusoe was probably based on the true story of a shipwrecked seaman called Alexander Selkirk and was passed off as history, while Moll Flanders included dark prison scenes drawn from Defoe's own experience in Newgate and interviews with other prisoners. His focus on the actual conditions of everyday life and avoidance of the courtly and the heroic made Defoe a revolutionary in English literature, and it helped define the new genre of the novel. Stylistically, Defoe was a great innovator. Dispensing with the ornate style associated with the upper classes, Defoe used the simple, direct, fact-based style of the middle classes, and this became the new standard for the English novel. With Robinson Crusoe's theme of solitary human existence, Defoe paved the way for the central modern theme of alienation and isolation. Defoe died in London on April 24, 1731, of a fatal stroke. The novel is widely perceived to have been influenced by the life of Alexander Selkirk, a Scottish castaway who lived for 4 years on a Pacific island called Massa Tierra. In 1966, its name was changed to Robinson Crusoe Island, Chile. However, Robinson Crusoe is far from a copy of Selkirk's account. Selkirk was marooned at his own request, while Crusoe was shipwrecked. The islands are different. Selkirk lived alone for the whole time, while Crusoe found companions. Selkirk stayed on his island for only 4 years, and not 28 as Robinson Crusoe did. Furthermore, much of the appeal of Defoe's novel is the detailed and captivating account of Crusoe's thoughts, occupations and activities, which goes far beyond that of the basic descriptions of Selkirk, which account for only a few pages. However, other possible sources have been put forward for the text. It is possible that Defoe was inspired by the translations of Ibn Tufayil's Hawi ibn Yaqdan, an earlier novel set on a desert island. Another source for Defoe's novel may have been Robert Knox's account of his abduction by the King of Ceylon in 1659 in an historical account of the island Ceylon. Tim Severin's book Seeking Robinson Crusoe unravels a much wider and more plausible range of potential sources of inspiration and concludes by identifying castaway surgeon Henry Pitman as the most likely. His short book speaks about his desperate escape from a Caribbean penal colony, followed by his shipwrecking and subsequent desert island misadventures. There are astonishing parallels with what happens to Crusoe. Pitman and his companions try to make pottery. They have a Man Friday figure with them who helps them catch fish. And above all, they are rescued by pirates in exactly the same manner that Crusoe was rescued by pirates. And even the names, there is a Jeremiah Atkins, a famous pirate in Pitman's story, and there is a Will Atkins in Crusoe's story. It was published by J. Taylor of London, whose son William Taylor later published Defoe's novel. Severin argues that Defoe might have met Pitman in person and learned of his experiences. Severin also discusses another publicized case of a marooned man named as Will, of the Mosquito people of Central America, who may have led to the depiction of Man Friday. Now, students, we will come to the actual story. So, because this is a very long story, we will divide the summary in 3 parts. The story starts when Robinson Crusoe is a youth of about 18 years. He resides in York, England. Although his father wishes him to become a lawyer, Crusoe dreams of going on sea voyages. He disregards the fact that his 2 older brothers are gone because of their need for adventure. His father cautions that a middle-class existence is the most stable, but Robinson ignores him. When his parents refuse to let him take at least one journey, he runs away with a friend and secures free passage to London. Misfortune begins immediately in the form of rough weather. A terrible storm causes the near deaths of Crusoe and his friend. The ship is forced to land at Yarmouth. When Crusoe's friend learns the circumstances under which he left his family, he becomes angry and tells him that he should have never come to the sea. They part, and Crusoe makes his way to London via land. He thinks briefly about going home, but cannot stand to be humiliated. He manages to find another voyage headed to Guyana. After a tumultuous journey where his ship is wrecked in a storm, his lust for the sea remains so strong that he sets out to sea again. Once he reaches Guyana, he wants to become a trader. This journey too ends in disaster. On the way, the ship is attacked by Turkish pirates, who bring the crew and passengers into the Moorish port of Saleh. Robinson is made a slave. For 2 years, he plans to escape. An opportunity is presented when he is sent out with 2 Moorish youths to go fishing. Crusoe throws one overboard and tells the other one, called Zuri, that he may stay if he is faithful. They anchor on what appears to be an uninhabited land. Soon they see that black people live there. These natives are very friendly to Crusoe and Zuri. At one point, the two see a Portuguese ship in the distance. They manage to paddle after it and get the attention of those on board. The captain is kind and says he will take them aboard for free and bring them to Brazil. Robinson goes to Brazil and leaves Zuri with the Portuguese captain. The captain and a widow in England are Crusoe's financial guardians. In the new country, Robinson observes that much wealth comes from plantations. He resolves to buy one for himself. After a few years, he has some partners and they are doing well financially. Crusoe is presented with a new proposition to begin a trading business. These men want to trade slaves and they want Robinson to be the master of the trade post. Although he knows he has earned enough money, Crusoe decides to make the voyage. He is shipwrecked in a storm about 40 miles out to sea on an island, which he calls the island of Despair, near the mouth of Orinoco River on September 30, 1659. Robinson is the only survivor. He manages to make it to the shore of an island. Only he and 3 animals, the captain's dog and 2 cats, survive the shipwreck. Overcoming his despair, he fetches arms, tools and other supplies from the ship before it breaks apart and sinks. He is able to take many provisions from the ship. He builds a fenced-in habitat near a cave which he excavates. By making marks in a wooden cross, he creates a calendar. By using tools salvaged from the ship and the ones he makes himself, he hunts, grows barley and rice, dries grapes to make raisins, learns to make pottery and raises goats. During that time, he recreates his English life, building homes, necessities and learning how to cook. He also adopts a small parrot. He reads the Bible and becomes religious, thanking God for his fate in which nothing is missing but human society. At first he is very miserable, but he embraces religion as a balm for his unhappiness. He is able to convince himself that he lives a much better life here than he did in Europe, much simpler, much less wicked. He comes to appreciate his sovereignty over the entire island. Once he tries to use a boat to explore the rest of the island, but he is almost swept away and does not make the attempt again. He treats his pets as his subjects. There is no appearance of man until about 15 years into his stay. He sees a footprint and later observes cannibalistic savages eating prisoners. They don't live on the island. They come in canoes from the mainland, which is not too far away. Robinson is filled with outrage and resolves to save the prisoners the next time these savages appear. Some years later they return. Using his guns, Crusoe scares them away and saves a young savage whom he names Friday after the day of the week he appeared. Crusoe then teaches him English and converts him to Christianity. Friday is extremely grateful and becomes Robinson's devoted servant. He learns some English and takes on the Christian religion. For some years, the two live happily. Then, another ship of savages arrives with 3 prisoners. Together, Crusoe and Friday are able to save 2 of them. One is a Spaniard, the other is Friday's father. Their reunion is very joyous. Both have come from the mainland close by. After a few months, they leave to bring back the rest of the Spaniards' men. Crusoe is happy that his island is being peopled. Before the Spaniard and Friday's father can return, a boat of European men comes ashore. There are 3 prisoners. While most of the men are exploring the island, Crusoe learns from one that he is the captain of a ship whose crew mutinied. Robinson says he will help them as long as they leave the authority of the island in his hands, and as long as they promise to take Friday and himself to England for free. The agreement is made. Together, this little army manages to capture the rest of the crew and retake the captain's ship. Thus, Robinson remains on this island for 28 years. Friday and Robinson are taken to England. Even though Crusoe has been gone so many years, he finds that his plantations have done well and he is very wealthy. He gives money to the Portuguese captain and the widow who were so kind to him. In conclusion, he takes his wealth overland to England to avoid travelling by sea. Friday comes with him, and along the way they endure one last adventure together as they fight off hundreds of famished wolves while crossing the Pyrenees. He returns to the English countryside and settles there, marrying and having 3 children. When his wife dies, he once more goes to the sea, and here the story ends. Robinson Crusoe is a novel written in the form of autobiography. It is a story of Robinson's life narrated by him. He recites his experience in his adventures in the sea. The style is journalistic. The author collects some interesting material about a seaman's adventures in his novel. The style is brief and accurate. The author has the ability to know what will interest his readers, and he manages to catch their attention. All the voyages give the novel a certain appeal. The author gives a brief account of Crusoe's adventures, but there is much accuracy in his style. The accuracy of his style can be noticed in the minor details which Robinson gives us throughout this story. For example, when he plans his escape from captivity, he lists down all the items he intends to take with him. Also, when he is stranded on the island, he recounts in details all the objects he manages to get from the ship. The details make the text seem real, not fiction. There are lists of objects and actions. While reading the book, we get the feeling that whatever happens to Crusoe and whatever he does must be true. Defoe produces the impression of complete reality by embodying a mass of details. We are also given all sorts of details of his mental and spiritual life. The novel is also about a man living during the age of reason. Thus, in this novel, there is a call to cultivate reason. Daniel Defoe shows that man can achieve great things if he depends on reason. This is seen through Robinson's life on the isolated island. He depends on reason to build a proper habitation and create a source of nourishment for himself. He learns through trial and error and makes a lot of experiment in order to invent some useful articles. He also learns from the previous experience. He makes a simple lamp using the fat of goats. He also manages to make pots from clay and manages to burn them also. When his crop is threatened by goats and birds, he builds a hedge to protect it. Whenever he is confronted with problems, he thinks deliberately of a proper solution. This shows that he is a reasonable and rational man. He does not surrender to despair, although he meets a lot of difficulties in growing the corn. He does not give up. He knows that he is in bad need for his crop. Therefore, he should find solution. This also shows his inventiveness. After Robinson manages to make a canoe, he thinks of a way to move it towards the sea. Robinson starts to calculate and measure the length and the depth of the canoe and thinks of a way to take it to the shore. This also shows that he calculates and measures everything. In conclusion, it is clear that this novel is an autobiography of an individual man who spends some years on an uninhabited island where he is able, by his skills, to provide himself with all sorts of amenities and comforts. So, here we have discussed now about the text itself. In our next class, we will discuss the literary qualities of this novel, Robinson Crusoe. I hope you have understood everything well. Thank you very much. See you in my next class.